What Queen Camilla realized when the thick, cream-colored envelope was placed on her private desk was not the beginning of a heated family argument, but the terrifying finality of a corporate eviction. For decades, she had operated under the assumption that the vast wealth of the British monarchy was essentially a shared family bank account, one that she could discreetly tap into to maintain her independent lifestyle and secure her children's futures. But as she read the coldly polite legal notice bearing the unmistakable administrative hallmarks of the Duchy of Cornwall, the illusion of her absolute power evaporated. She was given exactly 48 hours to untangle her private estate. Raymill House from the sovereign funding mechanisms that had quietly subsidized it. This was the moment she understood that the Crown does not negotiate with those who attempt to exploit its vulnerabilities. By the end of this video, you will understand the hidden financial warfare that recently brought the royal household to the brink of an invisible crisis. We will unpack the widely circulating rumors of Camilla's sudden need to panic sell her beloved private estate, exposing the secret financial power grab she attempted while King Charles was sidelined by illness. You will discover how Princess Anne, the monarchy's most ruthless guardian of protocol, uncovered the paper trail, and how Prince William executed a silent, devastating retaliation that stripped Camilla of her financial autonomy. You will see firsthand how the institution weaponized administrative deadlines to force the Queen Consort into a state of staggering commercial desperation, reminding her that without the King's active protection, she possesses no inherent leverage at all. To fully grasp the psychological devastation of this 48-hour mandate, we must first look at what Raymill House truly represents. Located in Wiltshire, just a short drive from King Charles's Highgrove estate, Camilla purchased the property in the mid-1990s following her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles. Over the next 30 years, it became far more than just a country residence. It was her sanctuary, her command center, and most importantly, her shadow court. It was the one place where she did not have to bow to the ancient protocols of the House of Windsor, a place where her non-royal children Tom and Laura were treated like royalty, and where her closest allies could gather away from the watchful eyes of the palace courtiers. Throughout her methodical 3-decade campaign to rehabilitate her public image, Camilla used Raymill House as a psychological anchor. As she successfully navigated the transition from the most hated woman in Britain to Queen Consort, systematically working to erode the enduring saintly legacy of Princess Diana, her private home remained her safety net. She had grown deeply accustomed to the perks of her proximity to the throne. Over time, the boundaries between her private expenses and royal subsidies began to blur. Security details, estate maintenance, and staffing costs for her private sanctuary were quietly absorbed by the sprawling financial umbrella of the monarchy, specifically the Duchy of Cornwall, which Charles controlled for over 50 years. When Charles finally ascended the throne, Camilla's confidence morphed into a dangerous sense of entitlement. She believed that her long game had been entirely successful, and that her private assets were now permanently shielded by the absolute authority of the king. During Charles's recent highly publicized battles with his health, Camilla found herself stepping in to lead the royal family at various public engagements. This sudden elevation created a massive illusion of absolute power. Operating within this power vacuum, she believed the institution was finally entirely dependent on her, and she sought to capitalize on this perceived indispensability to finalize her ultimate goal, which was the permanent elevation and financial security of her own bloodline. Behind closed doors, Camilla initiated a highly secretive, calculated administrative maneuver. Aware that her time at the apex of royal power was intrinsically tied to Charles's health, she attempted to officially and permanently merge the operating costs of Raymill House into the institutional budgets of the Crown. She requested that long-term contracts be drawn up, guaranteeing that the extensive security apparatus, the estate management fees, and the private staffing for her children's favoured retreat would be perpetually funded by the Duchy of Cornwall, regardless of who sat on the throne. It was an astonishing act of commercial overreach, a blatant attempt to force the British taxpayer and the royal estates to underwrite a private Windsor Parker Bowles empire indefinitely. However, Camilla made a fatal error in her reading of the palace dynamics. She mistook the quiet, uncomplaining dignity of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and the silent grief of Prince William as indicators of institutional weakness. She failed to recognize that Prince William's devotion to his mother, Princess Diana, had evolved into a fierce, heavily guarded fiduciary duty to protect the legacy of his own wife and children. William was no longer the grieving son, he was the Duke of Cornwall, possessing absolute legal and financial control over the multi-billion-pound estate that Camilla was attempting to siphon from. Furthermore, Camilla vastly underestimated Princess Anne, a woman whose loyalty to the crown's preservation borders on the absolute, and who possesses an encyclopedic knowledge of royal protocol and expenditure. The discovery of this secret financial grab was not made through a dramatic leak, but through the forensic, ruthless efficiency of Princess Anne, while managing the overarching logistical budgets during the king's reduced schedule, and began a deep audit of the discretionary spending requests passing through the palace's financial offices. It did not take long for her to spot the anomalies. The requests to permanently lock in duchy funding for Ray Mill House were buried in routine, administrative updates. Anne immediately brought the paper trail directly to Prince William. The two most formidable figures in the royal family, bound by their shared, unspoken commitment to protect the institution from internal exploitation, aligned instantly. The execution of their retaliation was a masterclass in weaponized restraint. There were no shouting matches behind closed doors, no angry phone calls, and no dramatic confrontations that could be leaked to the press. Instead, William simply exercised his absolute legal right as the Duke of Cornwall. Working in flawless synchronization with Princess Anne's protocol office, William's financial team issued a formal administrative notice directly to Camilla's private secretary. The document politely but firmly stated that all non-essential, non-royal financial subsidies directed toward Ray Mill House were out of compliance with the duchy's strict fiduciary guidelines. The trap snapped shut with a single devastating clause. Camilla was given exactly 48 hours to transition all security, staffing and maintenance contracts back to her own private accounts. If she could not independently fund the massive overhead of her shadow court, the royal household would completely sever its logistical support, leaving the estate effectively unmanageable and entirely unprotected. As she stared at the document, the terrifying reality of her commercial desperation took hold. Despite the priceless tiaras on her head and the royal titles attached to her name, she realized she did not possess the liquid personal wealth required to sustain her own empire. She was trapped entirely outmaneuvered by a silent administrative guillotine, facing the immediate, humiliating prospect of having to panic sell her sanctuary because the future king had simply turned off the tap. The isolation that followed the delivery of that 48-hour notice was, unlike anything Camilla had experienced in her 30 years of royal maneuvering. She had spent a lifetime conditioning herself to fight back against public criticism and media scrutiny, always relying on King Charles to serve as her ultimate shield. But as she sat in her private quarters with the Duchy of Cornwall's legal mandate in front of her, she was forced to confront a completely different kind of adversary. This was not a tabloid rumor she could spin, nor was it a rogue courtier she could have fired. This was the cold, unyielding machinery of institutional law, weaponized by a future king who legally owned the very ground she was trying to claim. Desperate to reverse the guillotine before the 48-hour deadline expired, Camilla sought an immediate private audience with King Charles. She approached him not just as his wife, but as the woman who had carried him through his darkest public scandals and recent health crises. She laid out the administrative notice, expecting the king to immediately summon Prince William and demand that the funding for Ray Mill House be restored. She anticipated that Charles would use his sovereign authority to override his son, protecting her sanctuary and ensuring that her non-royal children would continue to enjoy the financial umbrella of the crown. But as the king read the document, the room fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Charles did not reach for the telephone. He did not summon his private secretaries to draft a counter-order. Instead, he looked at the legal seals of the Duchy of Cornwall and realized the absolute checkmate his son had engineered. Since ascending the throne, Charles no longer controlled the duchy, that multi-billion-pound empire, and all of its discretionary spending power belonged entirely and legally to Prince William. For Charles to intervene, he would have to publicly demand that the state-subsidized sovereign grant be used to fund his wife's private country home, an act that would trigger an immediate parliamentary crisis and a catastrophic public backlash during a time of extreme royal vulnerability. When Charles finally looked up at Camilla, his silence was the ultimate betrayal. He softly but firmly refused to intervene. He chose the survival of the institution over the financial security of her private bloodline. In that crushing moment, the psychological climax of her entire royal career was realized. Camilla understood that the king's love for her had a hard institutional limit. He would give her the titles. He would give her the curtsies, and he would let her wear the priceless jewels. but he would not tear apart the financial architecture of the monarchy to fund her private empire. She was completely on her own. This devastating refusal exposed the staggering commercial desperation that has recently fueled the rumours of her needing to panic sell Raymil House. To the global public, Camilla projects the aura of a billionaire matriarch draped in the historical wealth of an empire. But the forensic reality is that without the Duchy of Cornwall quietly paying the exorbitant bills for security, staffing and maintenance, her private estate is a financial black hole. She simply does not possess the independent liquid capital required to maintain a property of that magnitude at a standard fitting for a reigning queen consort. Prince William knew exactly what he was doing by severing the financial lifeline. This was never just about balancing a ledger. It was a surgical strike designed to achieve institutional erasure. By cutting off Raymil House, William forced Camilla to either dramatically downsize her shadow court or liquidate the asset entirely. It was a silent but absolute declaration that the vast wealth generated by the Crown estate exists solely to fund the bloodline of the Crown. William was ensuring that when King Charles's reign inevitably concludes, Camilla's non-royal children will not have secured any permanent footholds within the royal portfolio. The door was permanently locked and the key was thrown away. The contrast between Camilla's frantic behind-the-scenes financial scrambling and the pristine, unbothered re-emergence of Catherine the Princess of Wales could not have been more striking. While Camilla was auditing her private bank accounts and realizing she owned nothing, Catherine was stepping back onto the world stage with the effortless grace of a woman who owns the future. Catherine did not need to manipulate administrative documents or hide funding requests and protocol updates. Her power is absolute, derived from her unbreakable bond with the British public and her position as the mother of the next generation of kings. Every time Catherine appeared in public during this period, standing shoulder to shoulder with William, wearing pieces from Princess Diana's private collection, it served as a visual reinforcement of the new order. The palace was sending a clear, undeniable message to anyone paying attention. The era of compromises and backdoor negotiations was over. The Prince and Princess of Wales had assumed operational control of the monarchy's future, and they were restoring a strict traditional hierarchy where loyalty to the institution superseded personal ambition. Diana's son had successfully used the very system that once tortured his mother to legally and financially paralyze the woman who had replaced her. What appears to the outside world as a minor adjustment in royal property management is, in reality, the total dismantling of Camilla's imperial illusion. She remains the queen consort. She will continue to attend state banquets, and she will smile for the cameras at Royal Ascot, but the power dynamic has irrevocably shifted. She now knows that she is merely an institutional tenant, existing on borrowed time and borrowed wealth. The 48-hour eviction notice was not just a mandate to vacate a funding structure, it was a mandate to wake up to reality. As King Charles's reign moves through its most vulnerable chapters, the silent authority of Prince William and Princess Anne continues to tighten around the perimeter of the crown. They have proven that the most devastating moves in royal warfare are never made in the tabloids, but in the quiet, merciless execution of administrative protocol. What do you think about Prince William's ruthless financial strategy to protect the crown? And how do you view King Charles's refusal to save Camilla's private estate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for more deep analytical insights into the hidden mechanics of the world's most powerful institutions.